Imagine walking into a prestigious law firm as an intern, eager to prove your worth, only to be mocked and belittled because of where you come from. Lucas, a young black man from humble beginnings, faced just that. From the moment he stepped foot into the office, the whispers started. He wasn't judged by his abilities, but by his appearance and background. And the worst offender? Carlos, a senior lawyer, who took every chance to humiliate him in front of his colleagues. What no one knew was that Lucas wasn't just any intern. But before we dive into the story, comment below where you're watching from today. And if you enjoy stories with unexpected twists and life-changing moments, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Lucas, stepping into the office for the first time, felt the weight of responsibility that accompanied such an imposing environment. The young intern, with eyes shining with hope, tried to hide his anxiety and fear of not being accepted. His first impression of Carlos was harsh, a stern man with an expression that radiated coldness and disdain. Carlos, in turn, looked Lucas up and down and, without mincing words, made a sarcastic comment about the intern's simplicity. It was clear that, to him, Lucas was just another beginner, with no real chance to stand out. The surprise was evident on the young man's face, but he maintained his composure and responded with a timid smile, trying to mask his discomfort. As Lucas made his way to his desk, he felt the curious gazes of other interns like Beatriz and Enrique, who were already familiar with the tense atmosphere Carlos could create. Enrique, in a friendly tone, asked where Lucas was from, attempting to break the ice. Lucas replied that he came from a humble neighborhood, where challenges were a daily occurrence and every achievement was the result of courage and perseverance. His words struck a chord with Beatriz, who saw in Lucas's humility a reflection of her own struggles. Without hesitation, she offered to help with any questions he might have, sparking a small glimmer of hope in the heart of the new colleague. Carlos, however, seemed determined to assert his superiority at any cost. He approached Lucas and, with a sarcastic tone, suggested that the intern take note of all the office messages, insinuating that maybe this task was more suited to his skills. Lucas's expression did not change. He was already used to dealing with such attitudes. "I'll do that, yes, sir," he replied calmly. The firmness and serenity in his voice were a small victory, a sign that he wouldn't be easily shaken. Carlos, for his part, was surprised but did not show it. He just nodded and returned to his work, perhaps already planning the next test for the newcomer. The day continued with Lucas striving to absorb every detail of the office's workings. He watched attentively as cases were discussed and how the lawyers prepared before each hearing. To him, it was a new universe, but not an intimidating one. He knew that every little detail learned there could be a key to his future. When Carlos noticed the young intern's keen observation, he made a point of humiliating him again, this time in front of everyone, asking loudly if he thought he knew everything just because he was eavesdropping. The public humiliation caused a brief stir, but Lucas remained composed. Despite everything, there was something about Lucas that intrigued Carlos. Perhaps it was the intern's resilience, his ability to remain unshaken by the attacks. Lucas showed no anger, only a calmness that was almost incomprehensible for someone facing such situations. "He will break," thought Carlos, as if he were waiting for the moment the young man would finally give up. But for Lucas, every day there was another opportunity for overcoming, to show that his faith in himself and his determination could overcome any obstacle. He knew he had a mission, something greater than just keeping his job. With each imposed test, he grew stronger, more prepared. The interaction with the other interns gradually became more natural. Beatriz admired Lucas's courage in facing everything head-on, despite the difficulties. She herself had been through similar situations, where she was underestimated and had to prove her worth at every moment. They began sharing stories, and Lucas talked about how, since he was young, he had to work to help at home, and how this shaped his character. Beatriz felt a genuine connection, something that went beyond the formal office environment. The friendship that was forming was a sign that Lucas was not alone. However, with every step taken, with every small victory, Lucas knew he was just beginning. There was a long road ahead, and he needed to be prepared for the challenges to come. Carlos continued observing, looking for flaws, waiting for the moment when he could finally say, "I told you so." But what he didn't know was that Lucas had an unshakable inner strength, a faith that guided him even in the most adverse situations. Lucas believed that everything had a purpose, and that in the end, his courage and perseverance would be rewarded. He knew he needed to be strong and that, for this, he needed more than technical knowledge. He needed love and compassion, qualities no law book could teach. As the days passed, the relationship between Lucas and Carlos remained tense. The lawyer seemed determined to test the young intern at every opportunity. On a particularly busy morning, Carlos called Lucas to accompany him to an important meeting but made it clear that he was there just to watch and learn. Lucas, with a confident smile, replied that he was there to learn, yes, but that if he could contribute in any way, he would be happy to help. The response surprised Carlos, who, once again, did not expect to see such confidence from someone he considered inexperienced and incapable. After the meeting, Carlos stepped aside to speak with Miguel, the founder of the firm. "This kid has something different," he commented. Miguel, without revealing anything, simply smiled and said that everyone deserved a chance to show their worth. The answer left Carlos intrigued, but he didn't question it. He believed he knew the game, that he could predict everyone's moves in that environment. But Lucas was there to show that sometimes the biggest twist comes from those we least expect, and that the true value of a person is not in how they dress or where they come from, but in the courage to face themselves and the world around them. Lucas continued his work with dedication, trying to focus only on the opportunities that arose. He knew he needed to prove his ability, not to others, but to himself. With every new task, he sought to give his best, even if it meant sacrificing hours of rest. And when he thought he was alone, there was always unexpected support, a word of encouragement from Beatriz, a look of understanding from Enrique. These small gestures made him feel that, despite everything, there was still hope and that, with perseverance, he would be able to carve out his place. As the first month drew to a close, Lucas began to notice a subtle shift in the attitude of his colleagues. Even Carlos, who initially seemed determined to sabotage the young man, began to show a different interest, almost as if trying to understand where that resilience came from. But Lucas knew he needed to stay focused, that there was still much to be done, and that each step taken was only the beginning of a greater journey. He didn't want to prove anything to anyone but himself, and that was his greatest challenge. Every day, he remembered his mother's words, "Life is a battle, my son, but with faith, love, and courage, you can overcome any obstacle." So, with his heart full of hope and his mind focused on his goals, Lucas continued his path, knowing that even in the most difficult moments, he could always rely on his faith and the strength that came from the love and compassion he carried in his heart. He knew that life was full of challenges but also of twists, and that each moment there was an opportunity to show, not just to others, but most importantly to himself, that he was capable of overcoming any barrier that stood in his way. The office continued its usual routine, but for Lucas, each day was a new battle. He struggled to prove his worth, even though the tasks assigned to him were far below his potential. While Beatriz and Enrique received opportunities to handle cases and attend meetings, he spent most of his time filing documents and organizing folders. The situation was frustrating, but Lucas remained calm, believing that every moment was a learning experience. Carlos, however, seemed determined to make him the target of his jokes. "Are you specializing in organization, Lucas?" he would mock, drawing laughter from the other lawyers. The humiliation peaked during a general meeting, where Carlos made a point of belittling Lucas's work in front of everyone. "For someone who only organizes papers, he does a pretty good job," he remarked with a sarcastic smile. The collective laughter felt like a punch to the stomach, but Lucas took a deep breath and decided he wouldn't let it affect him. "I do my best in any task, sir," he replied, with a firmness that surprised everyone. The atmosphere became awkward for a moment, and Beatrice, sensing Lucas's discomfort, gave him a supportive look, as if to say, "Don't give up." The following days were a real trial by fire. Lucas found himself overwhelmed with stacks of papers, documents to file, and tasks that seemed endless. Carlos, with his usual irony, commented that he was becoming the most efficient intern in the art of storing papers. However, Lucas refused to be discouraged. Each document filed was an opportunity to learn more about the firm's cases, and he began to notice patterns and strategies that could be useful in the future. Perseverance was his companion, and he knew that, eventually, the right doors would open. One day, while organizing a box full of old files, Lucas came across a document that caught his attention. It was an old case, but with complex details that showcased an interesting legal strategy. He spent hours studying that document, trying to understand the nuances of the case and why certain decisions had been made. When Beatrice found him in that state of concentration, she joked, "Careful, Lucas, you're going to end up liking files more than people." He laughed, but he knew that moment of study was a way of preparing for something bigger. Carlos, however, continued to challenge Lucas. One busy afternoon, he called the intern to carry boxes of documents to the meeting room. "Are you going to need help carrying all this paperwork, Lucas?" he teased. The intern, with a smile on his face, responded that he could handle it alone. And he did. With every step, every task, Lucas showed that his strength wasn't just in his body, but mostly in his mind and heart. His calm and firm attitude was beginning to win the sympathy of other colleagues, who noticed the unfair treatment he was receiving. During a lunch break in the office cafeteria, Lucas was once again the target of Carlos's jokes. "You know, Beatrice, I still think he came to the wrong office. He looks more like a library assistant than a lawyer." Beatrice, indignant, couldn't hold back. "Carlos, maybe you should pay more attention to people's potential instead of trying to belittle them all the time." Her response left everyone in silence, and Lucas felt a mix of gratitude and surprise. He had never seen anyone stand up to Carlos like that, and it gave him a new sense of motivation. Enrique, who had also witnessed the scene, approached Lucas afterwards and, with a more serious tone, said, "Man, you're really strong to put up with all this without blowing up. Not everyone can stay that calm. I don't know how you do it, but you have my respect." Lucas thanked him, but deep down, he knew his strength came from something greater, from an unshakable faith his mother had always taught him. He believed that, no matter how bad things got, there was always a way to overcome, and that God wouldn't give him a challenge without also giving him the ability to conquer it. The following weeks were marked by growing tension. Now aware that his provocations weren't shaking Lucas, Carlos began to ignore him completely. For many, this would be a relief, but for the young intern, it was just another sign that he was still not seen as part of the team. Even so, he remained firm, continuing to perform his duties with the same dedication. Beatriz and Enrique, now closer to him, tried to include him in discussions, bringing information about the cases they were working on. They knew that, despite everything, Lucas had a lot to offer. In one of those conversations, Enrique mentioned a book that had inspired him to pursue a career in law, The Art of Nonconformity by Chris Gilbo. "You should read it, Lucas. It's about how people who don't fit the mold can transform the world around them. I think you'd like it." Lucas noted the recommendation and started reading that very night. Each page was a breath of inspiration, a reminder that he could, indeed, make a difference, even in an environment that seemed so hostile. He felt that this was the kind of knowledge few shared, and that within those pages were answers to many of his doubts. Over time, Lucas's resilience began to resonate with the firm's employees. People who previously just watched began to offer words of encouragement and recognition. "You have incredible strength, kid," said one of the senior lawyers. "Keep it up, and soon you'll be defending us in major cases." Lucas would smile and thank them, but he knew there was still a long way to go. He didn't just want to be a good intern. He wanted to be a great lawyer, someone capable of transforming people's lives and using his knowledge to pursue justice. The internal transformation Lucas was experiencing was evident. He began to see each small task as a step toward something greater. In his nightly prayers, he asked for strength to continue, to not lose focus, and most importantly, to not let resentment consume him. He knew that, to win, he needed to have compassion, even for those who hurt him. After all, as his mother used to say, love is the only force capable of turning enemies into friends. He believed that, and this belief was what kept him strong, even when everything seemed to be falling apart. The truth is that, despite so much adversity, Lucas never lost hope. He had faith that, at some point, his moment would come, and that everything he faced there was just preparation for something greater. The perseverance he demonstrated every day was an example to everyone who knew him. And although Carlos continued to see him as just an ordinary intern, many already saw in Lucas a future brilliant lawyer, someone who, with courage and determination, would overcome any obstacle. Lucas knew he needed a chance to prove his skills, but he didn't expect it to come so suddenly. One busy afternoon, the office was hit by an emergency, a highly complex case requiring meticulous attention to detail and creative problem-solving. All the lawyers were overwhelmed, and time was running short. Miguel, the firm's founder, looked stressed. "We need to review these documents immediately, but we're short-handed," he said, glancing around. Carlos, watching the scene unfold, took the opportunity to mock Lucas. Why not let Lucas play lawyer? Maybe he'll surprise us. The provocation was clear, but Lucas, without hesitation, volunteered to help. "I can analyze these documents, sir," he said confidently. Carlos's expression was pure disbelief. "Seriously? Do you think you can handle this?" Lucas remained calm and said that at the very least, he would try. Miguel, noticing the intern's confidence, decided to give him a chance. "All right, Lucas. But understand that this is serious. We need precision and speed." The young intern took a deep breath and accepted the challenge. He knew this was a crucial moment, where courage and perseverance would be his greatest allies. The weight of responsibility was immense, but he was determined to give his best. With the documents in hand, Lucas locked himself in the small file room where he spent most of his days. The challenge was enormous. Identify errors, inconsistencies, and gaps in a sea of legal information. He spent the entire night immersed in that material, reviewing every detail with a sharp eye. Each new discovery led to notes, thoughts organized, and strategies formulated. There was no room for mistakes. He knew this was his big chance to show he was not just there for simple tasks, but to genuinely contribute to the firm's success. The next morning, when Miguel asked if he had found anything, Lucas presented his detailed notes. "I found some inconsistencies in the other party's arguments and points we can exploit in our defense," he said, with the calm of someone who knew the value of what he was delivering. Carlos, still skeptical, grabbed the notes and began flipping through them. Seeing the amount of detail and clarity of the observations, his expression changed. This is good," he admitted, somewhat embarrassed. "Very good, actually." The unexpected recognition from Carlos was a significant moment for Lucas, but he knew the real test would be to see if his observations could indeed influence the case's outcome. The team began working on his notes, reformulating the defense and addressing the weaknesses he had identified. "You really surprised everyone, Lucas," Beatrice commented as she reviewed the documents beside him. I knew you had potential, but this was incredible." He smiled, still modest, but feeling for the first time that maybe, just maybe, he was starting to earn his colleagues' respect. The case involved a complex commercial dispute, where the opposing party had presented a series of seemingly irrefutable pieces of evidence. Lucas noticed that one of these pieces of evidence, a specific contract, had been digitally altered, something that could easily go unnoticed without a trained eye. He knew that if this detail was presented convincingly, it could undermine the entire argument of the opposing side. And that's exactly what happened during the hearing. When Carlos presented the flaw, the reaction was immediate. The opposing lawyers were caught off guard and had to backtrack on several points. The turnaround in the case was a shock to everyone. Miguel, who was attending the hearing, couldn't hide his pride. "This is the kind of attention to detail we need here," he commented to the other partners. The victory wasn't just for the firm, but particularly for Lucas, who for the first time felt the true sense of being part of something bigger. Carlos, despite his reluctance, had to admit, "You pulled us out of a tight spot, Lucas. Good job." It wasn't exactly an apology, but it was as close as he would get to one. After the hearing, the atmosphere in the office was euphoric. Beatriz and Enrique approached Lucas, beaming. "You nailed it, Lucas. That detail about the contract was brilliant." Beatriz exclaimed excitedly. Enrique added, "You showed that you're not just an intern, but a real lawyer in the making." Lucas, moved, thanked his friends. "I just did what I thought was right. I've always believed that with perseverance and faith, we can overcome any challenge." The sense of triumph was indescribable. For the first time, he felt that he was truly on the right path. The news of Lucas's performance quickly spread through the office. Other lawyers began to see him differently, realizing he wasn't just a rookie trying to prove himself, but someone with real talent and dedication. "Hey, Lucas, we need your help with a case here. Can you take a look?" asked one of the senior lawyers. The offer took Lucas by surprise, but he gladly accepted. He felt that this was the reward for all his dedication and the tireless effort of not giving up in the face of adversity. Even after this triumph, Lucas knew he couldn't rest. He kept studying, preparing, and absorbing everything he could about each case that came through the office. "I need to be ready for the next challenge," he thought. He knew that despite the recognition he was beginning to earn, the road ahead was still long. Each day was an opportunity to learn more, to show that he was capable of exceeding expectations. The respect he was beginning to earn was not just for his talent, but for his humility and constant effort to do his best, regardless of the task. What Lucas didn't know was that, with this feat, he had planted a seed of respect in Carlos's heart. The lawyer began to see the intern through a different lens. Not just as a hard-working young man, but as someone who truly had what it took to stand out in that competitive world. However, Carlos still had his doubts. He wanted to understand better who Lucas was and where that strength and dedication came from. But, for now, he decided just to watch. He knew that sooner or later, the truth would come out. And he was ready to deal with whatever he discovered. From the beginning, there was something about Lucas that unsettled Carlos. The intern's confidence, even in the face of adversity, seemed disproportionate for someone with so little experience. After the unexpected victory in the recent case, Carlos's curiosity turned into suspicion. Who is this kid really? He wondered. Determined to uncover the truth, Carlos began to dig into Lucas's life. He knew that any information could be valuable in understanding where all that confidence and skill came from. Someone who grew up in a poor neighborhood wouldn't have access to that much knowledge, he muttered under his breath while analyzing the few details he had about the intern's life. Carlos started asking subtle questions to the other interns, trying to find out more about Lucas. "Do you know where he's from?" he inquired casually. Beatrice, sensing his intention, always diverted the conversation. "Lucas is hard-working, that's all that matters," she said defensively. But Carlos didn't give up. He used personal contacts to access information that would normally be off-limits. He found out where Lucas went to school and even the scholarships he had received. Each detail made Carlos more intrigued. How did someone from such an underprivileged background manage to get so far? With every new discovery, the initial admiration Carlos had for Lucas turned into envy. He couldn't accept that someone with such a humble past could stand out in such a competitive environment. "This doesn't make sense," he grumbled to himself. He decided to take a more drastic step. He contacted Lucas's college friends, pretending to be a concerned acquaintance. "Was Lucas always this determined and focused?" he asked. The answer was always the same: "He's incredible. We've never seen anyone overcome so many challenges with such perseverance." While Carlos was engrossed in his investigation, Lucas continued to perform his duties with the same dedication as always. He had no idea what was happening behind the scenes. For him, the focus was to learn more every day and show that he deserved to be there. Miguel, watching everything from a distance, knew what was coming. He knew Lucas's true story and hoped that when the truth came out, everyone in the firm could learn a valuable lesson about faith and resilience. But for now, he decided to remain silent and let things unfold naturally. The turning point came on an otherwise ordinary day. Carlos, after weeks of investigating, found what he was looking for. He discovered that Lucas was not just any intern. He was Miguel's son, the founder of the firm. The revelation was a shock. "How did I not see this before?" he thought, feeling betrayed. In that moment, everything made sense. The confidence, the knowledge, the poise. It all added up now. Carlos felt a mix of anger and frustration. To him, it seemed that all of Lucas's efforts were just an act, a way to impress everyone before revealing who he really was. With his ego bruised, Carlos couldn't keep the discovery to himself. In an informal meeting with other lawyers, he dropped the bomb. "Did you know that Lucas is Miguel's son? He's been fooling us all along," he said, in a tone that mixed disbelief and disdain. The news spread like wildfire. Within hours, everyone in the office knew the truth. The looks of admiration Lucas had earned quickly turned into distrust and even resentment. Many felt deceived, as if the intern had used his position to gain the respect that, in reality, he had already deserved for a long time. The news reached Lucas abruptly. Beatrice, with a tense expression, called him for a private conversation. "Lucas, Carlos, he told everyone about you. About who you really are." The young intern, who until then had no idea about the investigation, was surprised and, for a moment, speechless. "So, that's it," he said, taking a deep breath. He knew this day would come, but he didn't expect it to happen this way. "I never wanted to hide my background, Beatrice. I just wanted to be judged for my work, not for the last name I carry." The public revelation of his identity was a harsh blow, but Lucas decided to face the situation with the same calm and courage he had always shown. The next morning, he walked into the office with his head held high, as he always did. Conversations fell silent as he passed by, but he didn't look away. Carlos, now visibly uncomfortable, tried to approach him. "Lucas, I didn't know," he began, trying to justify his actions. But the young man, with a serene smile, replied, "It's okay, Carlos. You did what you thought was right. Now, everything is clear to everyone." Miguel, knowing that the situation could get out of hand, decided to intervene. He called a meeting with all the staff. "I know many of you are confused and perhaps even feel betrayed by the way things happened," he began, with a firm but gentle tone. Lucas is my son, yes, but he is here on his own merit. From the beginning, he asked me to be treated like any other intern. He wanted to prove to himself and to everyone that his worth doesn't come from my name, but from the effort and dedication he puts into every task. Miguel's speech offered a new perspective to many in the room. Lucas's courage to expose himself that way, even when he could have chosen the easy path, sparked genuine emotion. Some colleagues approached to apologize for the way they had treated him, while others were still processing the revelation. Beatriz and Enrique, on the other hand, stayed by Lucas's side, showing that their friendship went beyond any label or social expectation. Their trust in him was not based on his background, but on his ability to face every challenge with love and compassion. For Carlos, the blow was twofold. Not only had he discovered the truth, but he also realized that in trying to expose Lucas, he had revealed his own weaknesses. He understood that all his resentment wasn't directed at the young intern, but at himself. The insecurity he felt seeing Lucas excel was, in reality, a reflection of his own doubts and fears. "I lost this battle before it even started," he thought, feeling a new wave of respect for the young man he had tried to bring down. Carlos knew he needed to change, but he still didn't know how. The atmosphere in the office was electric as everyone buzzed with the recent revelation about Lucas's identity. Despite the initial shock, the majority of the staff seemed eager to approach him, their attitudes shifting from disdain to attempts at reconciliation. Carlos, now fully aware of his precarious position, found himself struggling with conflicting emotions. He knew he had crossed a line, but his pride wouldn't allow him to apologize easily. The tension reached a peak when he decided to confront Lucas directly, hoping to salvage some dignity. "Lucas, can we talk?" he asked hesitantly as he approached the young man's desk. Lucas, who had anticipated this moment, looked up calmly. "Sure, Carlos. What do you want to discuss?" Carlos shifted uncomfortably. I didn't know who you were. If I had known, I would have," he began, but Lucas cut him off gently. "You would have treated me differently?" The question hung in the air, and Carlos felt the weight of it pressing down on him. "Yes, I suppose I would have," he admitted reluctantly. Lucas nodded thoughtfully. "That's exactly the problem, Carlos. Respect shouldn't depend on someone's last name or status. Everyone deserves to be treated fairly, regardless of where they come from." Carlos was taken aback by Lucas's calm demeanor and the clarity of his words. It was as if the young man had already forgiven him, even before he could articulate a proper apology. "I thought you were just trying to, show off," Carlos stammered, still grappling with his own embarrassment. Lucas smiled slightly. "I wasn't trying to show off, Carlos. I was just doing my job. I wanted to prove to myself that I could be here on my own merit." The sincerity in Lucas's voice was undeniable, and it left Carlos feeling even more exposed. As the news continued to spread through the office, Lucas found himself surrounded by colleagues who, until recently, had dismissed him. Some came to congratulate him, while others sought to justify their previous behavior. "We didn't know, Lucas. If we had known," one of them began, but Lucas interrupted with a firm yet kind tone. "I understand, but it shouldn't have taken my family background for you to see my potential." His words resonated deeply, leaving many in the room introspective. It was a moment of revelation for everyone, not just for Lucas. The shift in dynamics was palpable. Where there had been isolation and condescension, now there were attempts at friendship and solidarity. Beatriz and Enrique, who had stood by Lucas from the beginning, watched as their colleague navigated this sudden change with grace. "I knew you were something special, Lucas, but seeing you handle all this, it's inspiring," Beatriz said quietly. Lucas shrugged modestly. "I'm just trying to stay true to myself." It's not easy, but it's the only way I know how to be," Enrique added. "And that's exactly why you've earned everyone's respect, man." Carlos, meanwhile, was struggling with his own sense of guilt and confusion. He realized that his actions had been driven more by his insecurities than by any genuine malice towards Lucas. He felt the need to make amends but didn't know where to start. Finally, after several days of contemplation, he decided to take the plunge. Approaching Lucas in the break room, he spoke with uncharacteristic sincerity. "Lucas, I owe you an apology. I was wrong to judge you and wrong to act the way I did. You've shown more strength and character than I ever expected." Lucas, taken aback by the unexpected apology, paused before responding. "Thank you, Carlos. It takes courage to admit when we're wrong. I hope this can be a new beginning for both of us." The words were simple, but they carried a profound impact. Carlos felt a weight lift off his shoulders, and for the first time in weeks, he felt a sense of relief. "I'd like that," he said, extending his hand. Lucas shook it firmly, sealing an unspoken pact of mutual respect and understanding. It was a moment of closure, but also an opening for something new. The aftermath of the confrontation had ripple effects throughout the office. Some of the more skeptical employees, who had initially sided with Carlos, now began to question their own behavior. "If Carlos can admit he was wrong, maybe we need to reassess too," one of them commented during a lunch break. It was as if Lucas's journey had held up a mirror to the entire office, forcing everyone to reflect on their own attitudes and biases. Miguel, watching from the sidelines, felt a deep sense of pride. His son had not only proven his worth, but had also become a catalyst for change within the firm. The story spread beyond the office walls, and soon, even clients were curious about the young intern who had caused such a stir. Lucas found himself in the spotlight, not just because of his family connection, but because of the integrity and perseverance he had shown throughout the ordeal. One day, after a particularly challenging meeting, a senior partner approached him. "Lucas, I've been in this business for decades, and I've rarely seen someone handle adversity with such grace. You're going to go far, and I'm glad to have witnessed the beginning of your journey." For Lucas, this acknowledgement was both humbling and empowering. He knew that the road ahead would still be full of challenges, but now he felt more prepared than ever to face them. "I've learned that the only way to truly grow is to be honest with yourself and others," he reflected later that evening, talking with Beatriz and Enrique. "It's not about avoiding mistakes, but about how we choose to handle them when they happen." His friends nodded in agreement, knowing that Lucas's words were not just a lesson for the office but for anyone facing adversity. Carlos, too, was undergoing his own transformation. He started to question not just his treatment of Lucas, but his entire approach to his career and relationships. "I've been so focused on proving myself that I forgot what it means to actually be a good leader," he confided in Miguel one day. The older man listened carefully before replying. "True leadership isn't about control or power, Carlos. It's about inspiring others and recognizing their potential. Lucas showed you that, even if it wasn't in the way you expected." Carlos nodded, feeling a newfound respect for both Miguel and his son. As the weeks passed, the initial shock of Lucas's identity revelation faded, replaced by a deeper respect for his resilience and authenticity. The office, once divided by jealousy and competition, began to feel more cohesive, with people more willing to collaborate and support one another. And although the journey had been difficult, Lucas felt a sense of peace. He knew that he had not only proven his worth but had also helped others see the value of compassion, courage, and perseverance. He was ready for whatever came next, confident in his ability to navigate the challenges of both the legal world and life itself. The atmosphere in the office shifted dramatically as Lucas's true identity settled into everyone's minds. It was no longer just about his work ethic or his perseverance. It was about what he represented. His story became a catalyst for reflection and change. During a general meeting, Miguel decided it was time to formally address the situation. Standing at the front of the conference room, he spoke with a gravity that commanded attention. "Today, I want to introduce Lucas, not just as an intern, but as my son and a future partner in this firm. His journey here has been a testament to the values we should all aspire to: courage, resilience, and above all, humility." The room was silent as Miguel continued. Lucas chose not to reveal his background because he wanted to be evaluated on his own merits. He wanted to show that what matters most is not where you come from, but what you're willing to do to achieve your goals. The words resonated deeply with everyone present. They had seen Lucas endure mockery and unfair treatment, yet he never complained or sought special treatment. His story was not just one of perseverance, but of faith in himself and in the principle that true worth is proven through actions, not titles. As Miguel finished speaking, Lucas stood up and addressed his colleagues directly. His voice, though calm, carried an emotional weight that filled the room. "I want to thank you all for the lessons I've learned here, even the difficult ones. This experience has shown me that we all have the power to change our perspectives, to grow beyond our limitations. It's not about how others see us, but how we see ourselves. If we hold on to that belief, we can overcome any obstacle." His words were met with a standing ovation, a rare and powerful acknowledgement of the impact he had made on everyone there. Carlos, sitting in the back, felt a surge of conflicting emotions. He had spent so much time trying to undermine Lucas, only to find himself inspired by his strength and integrity. As Lucas continued speaking, Carlos realized that this young man had not only earned the respect of the office but had also transformed its very culture. "I was wrong about you, Lucas," he thought to himself. The acknowledgement was private, but it marked a turning point for Carlos. He understood that redemption wasn't just about apologizing, it was about genuinely striving to be better. The following days saw a remarkable transformation within the office. Conversations shifted from petty gossip to meaningful discussions about teamwork and personal growth. Inspired by Lucas's example, many began to rethink their approach to both work and relationships. Beatrice, reflecting on the journey they had all witnessed, shared her thoughts during a coffee break. "Lucas taught us that we need to look beyond the surface. It's so easy to judge, to make assumptions, but real strength comes from understanding and compassion." Enrique nodded in agreement. "We've all been changed by this. I think we'll be a better team because of it." Lucas, now more comfortable in his role, began to take on more responsibilities. He was no longer just the intern. He was a key player in the firm's future. His colleagues, recognizing his capabilities and vision, started seeking his advice and perspective on complex cases. One day, while discussing a particularly challenging case, a senior partner turned to Lucas and asked, "What do you think we should do?" It was a simple question, but it carried immense significance. Lucas's insights had become valued, his voice respected. It was a validation of everything he had worked for. Miguel, observing his son's growth, felt a deep sense of pride. He knew that Lucas had chosen the harder path, one where he would have to prove himself every step of the way. But he also knew that this journey had forged a character of unshakable strength and integrity. During a private conversation, he spoke to Lucas with a warmth that only a father can convey. "You've made me proud, son. Not because of who you are to me, but because of who you've become on your own. This firm will be in good hands when you take the lead." Lucas, humbled by his father's words, felt the weight of responsibility but also the excitement of what lay ahead. "I'm ready, Dad. I want to build something meaningful here, something that stands for the values we both believe in." The conversation was a moment of connection and shared vision, a passing of the torch that was more symbolic than official. Lucas knew that his journey was just beginning, and he was eager to make his mark, not just as Miguel's son, but as a leader who inspired others through action and integrity. The impact of Lucas's story reached beyond the office. Clients, hearing about his journey, felt a renewed sense of trust and admiration for the firm. "If this is the kind of character they foster, then we're in good hands," one client remarked during a meeting. It was clear that Lucas's presence had become a beacon of the firm's values, a living testament to its commitment to excellence and integrity. The transformation was not just personal but institutional, as the firm itself embraced a culture of respect, empathy, and relentless pursuit of justice. For Carlos, the journey was also transformative. He began to reevaluate his priorities, both professionally and personally. He reached out to colleagues he had previously alienated, striving to build genuine connections and repair damaged relationships. "Lucas showed me that true strength isn't about being the best in the room. It's about lifting others up along the way," he confided to a colleague one day. It was a difficult lesson, but one that he was determined to embrace. Carlos's redemption was ongoing, but it was sincere and, for the first time in a long while, he felt at peace with himself. As Lucas continued to grow into his role, he remained grounded in the principles that had guided him from the start. He knew that his story, while unique, was just one example of what was possible when someone believed in themselves despite the odds. "It's not just about being the best," he said during a mentoring session with new interns. "It's about being the best version of yourself, and that means never giving up, no matter how tough things get." His words were met with a mixture of admiration and hope, as the young interns saw in him not just a mentor, but a role model. The firm, now more unified and focused, thrived under this new spirit of collaboration and mutual respect. Lucas's journey from underestimated intern to future partner became a source of inspiration, not just within the office, but for everyone who heard his story. He had proven that true leadership isn't about titles or backgrounds. It's about character, courage, and the willingness to stand firm in one's values. And as he looked out at the team he had helped to inspire and transform, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that this was just the beginning of an even greater journey. Now that you've seen how Lucas transformed not just himself, but an entire office, ask yourself, what about you? How do you react when faced with prejudice or judgment? Are you like Carlos, quick to assume, or like Lucas, determined to prove yourself regardless of others' opinions? This story isn't just about one man's triumph over adversity. It's about the power we all have to change perceptions through our actions. What would happen if you approached every challenge with the same resilience and integrity that Lucas showed? Change starts with us, and it begins with how we treat those around us. So, what's your next step? Will you stand up against unfair judgments? Will you push through challenges with courage and hope? Let's make a commitment today to be better, to see beyond appearances, and to value people for who they truly are. If you found inspiration in Lucas's journey, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. There's so much more to learn and so many more stories that can change your life. Join us and be part of this transformative journey.